Thank you very much. You may rise for...
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Almighty Father, we thank you for this beautiful day. We thank you for bringing all of us together to reflect on this beautiful theme on the birthday Professor Pato Tommy on wealth, poverty, and human dignity, inspiring all of us and grant us the courage to follow through our decision at the end, and grant him many more happy returns of this day through Christ our Lord. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Thank you very much. I know that a lot of these distinguished people we have before you today don't need any introduction, but we would follow due process and then very quickly introduce them. Next to me is a man I've heard so much about, and he's one of those that have indeed made this country very, very proud. But before I do that, I think lest I lose my job, it's only proper that I do the right thing. The chairman of today's event just walked in, one of the very distinguished. Someone asked me if I was a member of the Bow Tie Club and if I had paid my subscription. And I said to him that the president of the Bow Tie Club is someone I know, and I have his permission, and if I have his permission, I don't think anyone can stop me. I'm sure you can guess. Please join me in welcoming the chairman of today's event, Mr. Folusho Phillips. You know, I was once in his office, and he said to me, you know, that my own class is different because we wear prepaid bow ties, but they knot their bow tie. And I said, okay, sir, we'll get there. One day, we'll get there. Please join me in acknowledging this very distinguished Nigerian. As I was saying, we have a number of Nigerians who have made us proud. And if you've not heard about the Songhai farm, I would advise that you Google it. This is something that is really, really, really something to celebrate. Magic, wonders are going on in that place. And the man behind this whole thing is Reverend Father Godfrey Izamujo. Please, sir. You know, they say there are different kind of doctors. There are honorary doctors, and there are those that have earned it. One of those that have earned it this morning is Dr. Fred Olayele. Please join me in acknowledging him. I don't know if I need to introduce the Archbishop because I'd called his name earlier, but in case you just walked into the room, next to him is Archbishop Augustine Akubeze. I needed to take that breath. Akubeze. Representing the President of the Republic of Rwanda is the Ambassador Stanislas Kamanzi, representing President Paul Kagame. Now, today is a very special day in the sense that a lot of us know we're here to celebrate Professor Patrick Otomi. But in a very unique way, we have a couple of people who share this day with him. We have, before that, the chairman of the event himself had his birthday yesterday. Today, wow. Isn't this special? And you'll have noticed that we have a couple of cakes. So we have a few things up our sleeves today. it promises to be a very interesting day for you. So we have one of those celebrating today alongside our chairman, Mr. Innocent Chukwuma, the country rep, Ford Foundation, West Africa. Next to him is a veteran artist and master painter, Mr. Kolade Oshinawa, also celebrating his birthday today. All right. When you handle events with very important personalities such as we have today, you need to be certain. I'm already in the mood of tomorrow, and so I thought today was the 6th of February, actually. So the birthday celebrations of Mr. Kolade Oshinawa and Mr. Innocent Chukwuma are actually tomorrow, and that's why I mixed it up. Today is actually our chairman's birthday. All right. Before we introduce someone very, very important, someone who needs little or no introduction, please let me introduce someone who has flown in all the way from our sister country. Someone said, Patrick Doyle said yesterday that in Nigeria, we put the O after anything we say. But in Ghana, the O comes before anything they say. Do I need to tell you who I'm talking about? All right. We have with us Mrs. Nana Afatsino. Okay, at this point, you would join me, and I hope we're ready with the national anthem. We would join me in welcoming the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Are you waiting for me to call his name? Vice President Yemi Oshibanjo. And to welcome in with the national anthem would be TK, a classical music artist.
Arise, O compatriots, Nigeria's call be to serve our fatherland with love and strength and faith. Deliberate, our heroes past shall never be in vain. To serve with heart and mind, one nation bound in freedom, peace and unity. One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, TK. Please join me in welcoming the founder of the Center for Values in Leadership, Professor Patrick Otome, to give us his welcome address.
Excellency, Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Excellency, President of the Republic of Rwanda, represented by His Excellency the Ambassador, Your Excellencies, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I am enormously honored to be able to welcome all of you to the 13th in the series of annual lecture symposia designed by the Cvl, the Center for Values in Leadership, to focus attention on some challenges before us, before our shared humanity. Because I'm also very cheap, through the years it has been used as an excuse to celebrate my birthday. Typically we have no eating and drinking, so when we have this lecture, which usually is on my birthday, and people say, what follows? We say, we've had it, we've celebrated. This year, interestingly, it is not exactly on my birthday, because my birthday is tomorrow. But we have chosen to celebrate it on the birthday of the chairman of the occasion, Mr. Furusha Phillips. So, happy birthday to you, Mr. Chairman. This year, the annual lecture has been part of a week of activities that we call the Cvl Week. And there is a theme for the entire week of activity. And this theme is wealth, poverty, and human dignity. We have gone through a number of programs during the course of the week, literally one every day, to focus attention on some specific areas. I think appropriately we started with culture. On Sunday we celebrated culture for a number of reasons. Part of it is that we have tried to make the point through the years that culture is a strong area of competitive advantage for our country, and that we could do a lot more, thrive a lot better, if we packaged and marketed our culture than we're actually doing from selling crude oil. And that process has enabled us through the years to work with Nollywood when nobody thought there was anything serious there. I remember in the very early days I used to organize free lectures and workshops at the Lagos Business School for people involved in developing that industry. And they give back enormously on Sunday with a thrilling evening that we had, and we're really thankful to them. Ms. Cvl Ajayi, who celebrated her 75th birthday only 2 days ago, was part of, in fact, led the performance on Sunday. But 25 years ago, we used to have meetings on what to do about culture in Lagos, in my home. And there was an American who truly became Nigerian called Chuck Mike, who led the performance studio workshop that performed out of the theater just nearby here. I'm thankful that from the years of doubt, people now are taking culture more seriously. But we do need a night economy in Lagos. We could put hundreds of thousands of people to work if we had a thriving night economy, building culture, packaging it, and selling it to the world. So I'm glad that we got a chance to bring attention to that on Sunday. And we followed with an entrepreneurship summit, which we brought some outstanding Nigerian entrepreneurs who have really walked on water as far as making enterprise come alive. And they shared their experiences with a number of young entrepreneur wannabes. But what was particularly exciting for me on that day, which is played through the whole of this week, is the presence of the Ajegunle contingent. Many years ago, through Benga Chesson and his work with information technology, Your Eminence, I became involved and got to know a lot more about the possibilities of making a huge difference in challenged communities. Since that period, the Cvl has done quite a bit of work in the Ajegunle community. And right now, it's involved in a Citibank-sponsored initiative to bring entrepreneurship to that community. And we had young entrepreneurs from that community at the event at the Lagos Business School on Tuesday. And we had a business plan competition. One of the banks supported that process. And at an event tomorrow, we're going to present checks to winners of that business plan competition. Fair amount of money, but that's not what we get their business where it's going. But tomorrow they will get a chance to make presentations to a significant group of business people who can choose to fund them. And imagine how much we can transform society if a number of those businesses eventually get where they could get to. And so that focus on our commitment to venturing and the dignity of the human person was raised. And those who listen to me know that I frequently talk about a favorite verse of scripture for me, which is Genesis 2:15. That in fact we were created to be co-creators with God, moving creation towards His perfection. And through venturing, we do get to go and travel that route. The day after, we had a colloquium on politics, a developmental state, and human progress. One of the much debated subjects of our country is whether politics is underdeveloped in Nigeria. Are politicians bringing progress to our country, or are they taking our country back? How much does our politics reflect the need to elevate the dignity of the human person in our community? And that was a most interesting debate. Anybody who knows a debate with Femi Falana knows that it will not be boring. And we had a remarkable conversation that day. Yesterday, we had occasion to listen to Obi Ezekwesili speak to this theme as we presented a number of books that we have been associated with, either as author or the subject of in the discussion of poverty, its alleviation, and the dignity of the human person. And that was also an interesting day. Today we come to the heart of the matter, and we're enormously honored to have such a distinguished group of people to share experience with. I want, in closing, to turn to what matters the most to me, which is gratitude. So gratitude to so many for generosity undeserved that has made these 60 years much more pleasant than they could have been. So gentleman here, you don't realize things you do until people reflect you as mirror. As a gentleman in this audience who has played a remarkable part in one of the series of competitions, business plan competition for entrepreneurs, we had another one, a public policy debate series, which undergraduates, some of who are here, even with some of their parents, participated in debating public policy issues. And they had a remarkable number of entries. They had to start stopping people from trying to participate. And I think at the point there were past 600 undergraduates who wanted to participate in this process. Out of that list, and I got a chance to speak to 15 when they came to Abuja for a review about a week or two ago, speaking to them, 15 of them, and many of them are here today. We're going to have winners from this process and honor them and give them prizes at some point tomorrow. But it was fascinating. You know, those who think that tomorrow is lost have seen nothing yet. Our young people are much, much better than we give them credit for. And they want to change their country, and they are committed. And so, in presenting the books that focused on that and coming to today with this panel, I hope we can truly say thank you to all the people who have been part of this. I was talking about a gentleman and a habit, and he was responsible for organizing that debate series. Kingsley Bankwell, I had the opportunity of traveling as a visitor to the United States, a program from the U.S. government with a group of people. He was one of them. And when I heard him make a remark somewhere, he said he'd never heard as many thank yous in his life as being in my company over a few weeks. And it occurred to me that that is really true. I am exceptionally grateful for every moment, and I say thank you several hundred times every day. But I can't say thank you enough on a day like this. Thank you, and I start at where it matters most, to my dear wife. And I can tell you about being married to a woman like this. As a graduate student in the United States many years ago, I got a chance to be an intern with the Indiana delegation to the U.S. Congress and rotated through the members of the Congress. One of the congressmen at the time, the senator, was Dan Quayle, who became vice president of the United States later. And people like to make fun of Dan Quayle because he misspelled potatoes and stuff like that. But I can tell you something. In those days, by the way, there's a famous TV series, Lou Grant. And Lou was asked why, his old teacher ran into him and said, "Lou, you became a famous editor. You couldn't spell." And Lou Grant said, "Yes, I learned to use the dictionary." So no problem with spelling, just learn to use the dictionary. But I think that Dan Quayle took a lot of beating, not because he couldn't spell potato or tomato. He took a lot of beating because he was married to a much more clever woman, Maureen. But I tell people, why should that be a crime? I too am married to a woman who's more clever than I am. And I'm still around. Add to being clever, being very good looking. I mean, after 5 children, that's how she looks. Gratitude to so many. Today, particularly, dear Vice President, I think that he and I have had many conversations. And if our conversations play through, our country will be a greater place tomorrow. Your Eminence, I can't thank you enough. Colonel Nayeka, at this time yesterday, was in another continent and was flying towards Abuja, not Lagos. And he's managed to be here this morning. Thank you so much, Your Eminence. Your Grace, I can go on and that would take up too much time. But the Ambassador of Rwanda, really, thank you so very much. The people of Rwanda are so gracious. When the president could not come, and my phone rang this morning, and he said, "I'm calling from the office of the president of Rwanda," I thought, my goodness, we have this kind of decency left in the world, and they wanted to apologize personally that they could not be here. but they are represented, and I thank you very much indeed. I'm going to miss out many people, but there is a vote of thanks from the bottom of my heart. Gratitude flows out. Thank you all so much.
Vintage Professor Patrick Utomi. Very, very grateful. Please give him another round of applause. Prof beat me to it because I was actually going to quickly introduce his wife because, having been married a few years myself, I now realize the folly of not following due process, of not following the right protocol. So when we say Professor Patrick Utomi is having his birthday tomorrow, indeed what we mean is Professor Patrick Utomi is a co-participant in the birthday tomorrow. Please join me in celebrating the main celebrants, Dr. Mrs. Ifeoma Utomi. Having secured my entrance into the Utomi residence, please join me in welcoming someone who I would also like to introduce very specially. Someone was talking about Professor Utomi and saying that, I think it was Debella Williams, saying that Professor Utomi helps people whose parents he doesn't know, lends a lending hand. And I dare say that the gentleman I'm about to introduce is another such person. Each time I pick up my phone to disturb him, he's always willing to help. Please join me in welcoming someone I call Mentor, the chairman of today's event, to give his opening remarks, Mr. Felicia Phillips.
Well, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Your Excellency, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osinbajo. Let me just slip in there that the Vice President is an old boy of Igbobi College. And up I say, yes, and I have to say that simply because I am currently the President of the Igbobi College Obos Association. But then again, good morning to you, Pat, the birthday boy to be. I recognize and I do salute the ambassadors here and everybody else here on the high table. As they say, I stand on previous protocols. I want to start by saying a huge congratulations to Pat. Pat, happy birthday. I know it's tomorrow, but happy birthday all the same. And I'm sure right through this week, all the various events that have taken place have been embedded with endless eulogies about you and praise for all the work that you've done. And I think you really deserve it. But like everybody else, and I think this just shows that it's so important, I also have scribbled here on my note here, and I actually read it. I want to congratulate Ifeoma, Pat's dear wife, and thank her for tolerating him all these 28 or so years. Because, when you see Pat in a good day and, Pat, how is it for my, she's tolerating me, And you find that we sometimes celebrate people whose success is not wholly theirs, but is rightly shared by others who we sometimes ignore. And really, Ifeoma, I say a good thank you to you, congratulations. Thanks for doing a great job, because I know that we say that behind every man there's a successful woman, but the point is, I think you've pulled this man along all the way. I thank you for doing a great job. Pat, we all congratulate you and your family, and I personally welcome you to the 60s Club, because I crossed that club many years ago. I know you all don't believe it, but I have. I have known Pat as a great and relentless advocate for true leadership. I mean, all you need to do is to engage him within 5 minutes. He's varying on topics and issues concerning leadership. And I sense that Pat's continuing frustration at the misused and misspent opportunities in our country has forced him to question this issue about the leadership that we have. And I believe that frustration has manifested itself in the creation of the Center for Value in Leadership and the continuing investment that has kept that initiative alive. I don't want to beat on it too much, but I tell you, it is Pat's frustration with the system, and all you need to do is to have a conversation with him and you see it going through. So I can understand why the Center for Value in Leadership is an extremely important institution in trying to at least play his own part and see how we can continue to influence everybody and get everybody to get on board and appreciate it. Fundamentally, it always comes down to leadership. It's very much the same tone as we say that a very fundamental problem with our country today is that of corruption, which the president is pursuing and trying to deal with as a root cause. And attached to that also is this issue about leadership. Now, when Pat asked that I join him at this session, I must confess that my heart sank a bit because, my initial reaction was that, oh my God, I have to speak at a gathering that Pat is organizing. You see, that means you've got to do your work, do your research. It's going to be taxing. You can't come and just bullshit your way through it. It's Pat's event. But lo and behold, he made it easier for me because he said, look, Felicia, you're just going to be the chairman. And you've got eminent masters of ceremonies around to help you, and they can do all the heavy lifting. And then you have a panel of very distinguished people that can do all the heavy and deep thinking. So my task is extremely easy. And, sitting next to the vice president, I tell you, I'm going to be sitting really pretty. But however, before I sit down, I would like to share, as Pat has suggested, some few thoughts that I have on the chosen theme for today, which is about wealth, poverty, and human dignity. I did give it some thought, and I thought, well, it's a really interesting combination of words for this theme. A few weeks ago, I was in India, and in between my meetings, I had some time to really have a bit of a relaxed morning, and I was watching television and watched the BBC World, the normal documentary that's shown. And this documentary aptly describes and captures the theme of today. The documentary was about Greece. Greece has been through a lot of challenges. It was about the challenges that country had faced, especially last year, and how the whole economy seemed to just ground to a halt, seemingly just like that. And the documentary interviewed and captured the thoughts and situation of a particular man who was down and out on his luck and had been relegated to the lowest level of existence you could ever wish on anybody. Within the space of about 18 months, this man had moved from being a skilled builder and workman with a wife and a child, a home of his own, their annual vacation trips, surrounded by family in the true European style. He was relegated to a beggar on the streets. You see, within that period, he lost his job, then he lost his home. He ended up on the street with his daughter, who was now taken from him because she had to be taken into care. Not much was said about the wife. And this was a situation in which he had absolutely no choice to give up his daughter. And that was the first shot at his dignity. To lose your job, lose your home was tough enough. And then now, somebody else was taking custody of your child. This man was being fed at a central soup kitchen every day. He slept in shelters and took free bus rides all day to stay warm. He would wake up in the morning, jump in a bus, go as far as he could on a free ride, and then ride all the way back just to stay warm and to stay off the streets. There were no job places for him to even queue for a job. And he was ready to do any job to regain some level of dignity. You see, he had lost his dignity through the circumstantial poverty that he faced of having lost his source of living. So if you look at the process from wealth to poverty and then the resulting loss of dignity, it's almost like it's staged, like a gradual degradation of one's situation leading to a shattered life, a loss of your dignity. Now, the Greek man's situation is no different from the phases a country like ours could very easily go through step by step. My position is this. We tend to confuse being rich with being wealthy. They are two totally different situations. Nigeria remains an extremely rich country. Yes, we are rich in mineral resources, our gold, amethysts, precious stones that I can't even pronounce. And of course, our oil and gas for all it's worth. We are rich in agricultural capacity, we're rich in human capacity, but we're not wealthy. We're not a wealthy nation. And the reason is that we haven't learned to turn our riches into wealth. Very much like children who are left vast inheritances, which come to naught in such a short time because they have not learned the art of creating wealth. Creating wealth in Nigeria's context is learning to add value. It's getting cocoa from the ground and turning it into chocolates. It's getting cotton and turning it into fabrics. It's getting our cassava and turning it into starch and sweeteners and all those things. It's learning to do things along that value chain. It's learning to extract our gold and turning it into jewelry in which you've added value. That's how you create wealth. And that's where we've lost out in that process. Our inability to learn the art of adding value will continue to make wealth creation an illusion. You see, we're so out of practice that we are no longer able to enhance the competencies which we were developing during or before the oil boom. Before the oil boom, we were developing tremendous competencies in agriculture and the whole value chain of agriculture. The Bank of the North, National Bank, the Bank in the East, our railway system, our research institutions, even our universities were geared towards agriculture, saying, let us learn how we can add value. But of course, the oil boom came, and with oil, the rest is history. And then the import license period as well, where the little manufacturing that we were doing, because certainly at my time, when I was working in Ikeja as a controller, we had your Pfizers, your Dunlops, a whole lot of them in Ikeja area, and many more in Agbara. And gradually, import license regime, and it was now who could get import license and not who could manufacture. So we lost that art, that consistency of practice, of learning to do things. And you see, you cannot become good at something that you do not do regularly. Now, today, oil is gone. We know it's gone for now. And we're now jumping on the solid minerals bandwagon. And we find a lot of state governments are going to increase the intensity of their mining. They're going to increase the intensity of their agricultural efforts. But you see, the little missing link is that little effort is being put into how we're going to add value to those things so that we can create wealth. You see, we run the risk of continuing with a commodity-based economy by just changing to a different commodity. That's the latest talk in town. The pressure for revenue is so high because we've got to generate revenue so quickly that the fastest route is to just get rich quickly by just selling our commodities and not going through the route of adding value to it. The wealth creation route is a slow route, and we must not this time around leave it to our children, not leave it to the next generation. At least the best we can do is to start the process. If you are rich but do not turn your riches to wealth, you will remain poor, and poverty challenges human dignity. Let me share another experience with you before I sit down. Now, this is a bit personal. My daughter, a few years ago, returning home for her Christmas vacation, was caught up in a bad snowstorm that resulted in the airline being diverted to Manchester instead of London. And the whole trip was a huge challenge to everybody. It took more than 24 hours. So she had a US bank card, but didn't work with the ATM machine for some security reasons. And so she ran out of cash. So she was stuck. So she was in the category of poverty at that stage. Whilst we eventually managed to rescue her through friends who lived in Manchester so she could pay for her train ride to London and carry on with her trip, the experience she went through was one of the best lessons on losing one's dignity. And I think that's one that stays with her continuously. Before help came, she was about to start begging for the money she needed. She actually went to a very well-dressed white family who had shared the ordeal of the flight with her. You know, when you go through this get on and off and the flight is delayed, you tend to develop some relationships. But she went to this family and asked for just £6 to top up her cash which she had. And she actually showed them the amount of money that she had. The man said, sorry, I can't help you. And this was a family with Louis Vuitton suitcases and 2 or 3 of them, and looking very affluent, which is why she thought they would help. But you see, as God would have it, another seemingly struggling Nigerian family just observed her at a distance. And they could see she was getting a bit upset, probably beginning to cry. And they came to her rescue. And they gave her £10. And as she said, she burst into tears. But the thing about it is that obviously when her rescue came, she returned the money. But the lesson is that is what poverty does to the human being. It shreds your dignity. It's a frightening prospect. So in Nigeria, we have our riches in great abundance. But we will become a poverty-stricken nation if we do not learn to create wealth from our riches. We're very, very proud people, and must not let that pride lead to a loss of our dignity. So I think this is a very interesting topic, and I know there'll be different perspectives of this, because whilst I talked a bit about dignity, there's dignity in labor, which a lot is being talked about today, that let's see how we can put dignity into labor. And poverty is not just about money. There's poverty of ideas, poverty of values, poverty of not doing the right things. These are all the things we all have to continue to think about and to bear in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you. Pat, happy birthday once again.
Another round of applause for him, please. While the chairman was speaking, a couple of very important dignitaries, such as all of us that arrived earlier, walked in. And we'll just quickly like to acknowledge them and welcome some to the high table. So we have with us this morning, representing the national leader of the APC, the former Deputy Governor of Lagos State, Otumba Femi Pedro. Please, sir. Please, another round of applause for him. Also present here is, we've heard about solid minerals. I'm sure the chairman wasn't referring to the person I'm about to call to the high table. But we have with us a very distinguished Nigerian, someone who sets a very good example for we, the younger ones, when he conceded a few years ago. Sir, thank you very much. Please join me in welcoming the Minister of Solid Minerals. Are you waiting for me to announce his name? Oh, okay, just so you know that I didn't forget his name. The Minister of Solid Minerals, former Governor Kade Fayemi. I'm aware that we have some of his former colleagues in the audience, and I'm about to introduce one of them. Well, this time not to the high table. I think we've exhausted the seats. But please join me in recognizing the presence of a very unique governor in his time, Dr. Peter Obi, former governor of Anambra State. When I was much younger, there was a song that was very popular during the time of elections It went, Mommy, Daddy, Agbalajo Bine Dibo. Do you know it? All right, then a few years down the line, another song decided to compete with that song. Everybody loves. You know the song? I mean, you should know the song. Everybody loves Jimmy Agbaje. Please join me in recognizing the presence of JK. Okay, now, we're about to go international, and I need to try to be like the chairman of today's occasion. When he was speaking, I thought, it's not good to be here when you have such distinguished Nigerians, because they are the proof that indeed the standard of education has fallen. When you listen to me and you listen to them, you begin to wonder what kind of school I went to. So bear with me. Imagine that you're listening to the chairman. We have with us today the Director of African Studies at Northwestern University in the USA, former Special Advisor to the US President, Jimmy Carter, and the keynote speaker at the 2nd Cvl Annual Lecture in 2005, Professor Richard Joseph. I think he will be a good judge of how well I tried to feign proper pronunciation of the English words. Did I try? Encourage me, people. We also have with us the Chairman, Emerald Energy Resources Limited, Dr. Emmanuel Egboga. We have the former Chairman, NESG, Professor Anya O. Anya. We have the CEO of ABC Transport, Mr. Frank Eneji. We have the General Manager, Chief Audit Officer of Union Bank, Mr. David Izavere. I'm sorry, Dr. David Izavere. Forgive me, sir. I've not even come close to a doctorate. How dare I make such a mistake? And doctorate. I like when people speak like this. If you've not gotten something, begging, losing your dignity, you're very proud of it. He had to remind me, sir, earned doctorate. I beg you, I'm very sorry, sir. Thank you very much. I may proceed. Thank you very much. Now, I dare not make this mistake in the next introduction, and you will know why. When I tell people I'm half-caste, some of my friends say it's mixed breed. Half-caste being that my father is from the South, my mother is Yoruba, even my father is half Yoruba, and then my name is Abidemi Edmond. So I can't be forgiven if I make this mistake, because I'm about to introduce the custodian of the land. And as a half Yoruba boy, I need to do it right. You can see that stick. For those of you that are not Nigerians, that stick represents the presence of the Oba of Lagos. Please join me in welcoming. Represented ably by distinguished white cap chiefs. When you come into Lagos, they make you recognize that indeed, Ilueko Lawai, Abi? They nodded, so I'm in order. Another round of applause for me, please. It is my pleasure. I know you have the schedule and you are expecting me to introduce someone, but just before we introduce the person you think I'm about to introduce, Professor Patrick Utomi has just told us that we have in our presence the representative of the President of Rwanda, Ambassador Stanislas Kamanzi. Please join me in welcoming to give his address. Ambassador, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency. Oops, I forgot my glasses. I apologize. It's a recent phenomenon, and I tend not to, to have them on me. So, Your Excellency, the Vice President of the Republic of Nigeria, Honorable Minister, honorable dignitaries here present, Professor Patrick Utomi, our host today. I'm greatly honored to take part to this Cvl Annual Lecture on delegation by His Excellency President Paul Kagame, who would have wished to be here in person, but was not able to make it due to national imperatives that need his attention at home. He entrusted me to extend to you his sincere regrets and to wish you successful discussions. Allow me, Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, to say a few words in connection with today's theme. I wish to first and foremost applaud the Center for Values in Leadership and Professor Patrick Utomi in particular for proposing to reflect on a subject very relevant to our continent at large and to its constituent countries within their peculiar socio-economic and political perspectives. The three components of the chosen theme subtly feed in each other, leading to quickly understand that the centerpiece around which they gravitate is the people and their deserved welfare. You will excuse me for my repetition of the known, but we have to acknowledge that the people of Africa live in abject poverty, and this situation has compounded the continued erosion of their dignity within the global outlook. The situation is more so saddening when statistics highlight our continent being endowed with bountiful natural resources, which are unfortunately not usefully tapped to generate wealth. The challenge before us is how we restore the order of things to ensure that the resources serve the noble cause of elevating our people to deserved levels of development. It is, of course, encouraging hearing that economic growth is currently on the rise in Africa, and every player concerned should strive to keep it up. But surely, much more needs to be done, and well beyond the perspective of creating wealth for its own sake. Wealth is certainly a critical asset to eliminate poverty and to attain human dignity, but there is still need to look furthermore into people-centered aspects like equity, inclusiveness, sustainability, which only good leadership can dispense and can iteratively put to good use. For instance, the transformation characteristic of Asian tigers is to be credited to the capacity of the leadership of those countries to realize that their fundamental wealth endowment was the people, for which proper development paradigms had to be crafted for survival and ultimately for dignifying development. It did happen in Singapore, Malaysia, South Korea, and other countries in the region, and it can happen in our countries in Africa within our own context. In Rwanda, while we are still in the long process of transforming into a middle-income country, we have noted some significant levels of progress happening based on those values of placing human dignity at the center of our undertakings. The leadership of the country put focus on thinking big and achieving the maximum using minimal resources available, but most importantly, capitalizing on the people who feature in the process as the main actors and the main beneficiaries. For the first five years, the country was able to pull out of poverty more than 1 million people, owing to resorting to homegrown initiatives adapted to urgent development needs, making the right choices, participatory planning involving the people, government, and development partners, tapping and facilitating the power of private investment from within and from abroad, paved the way to that progress we are witnessing. The choice to make widely accessible modern tools, such as communication technologies, has caused seamless connectivity between rural and urban areas and accruing mutual benefits in terms of integration of markets and associated production and supply chains, but also in terms of easy access to routine and new services by the citizenry. Specific programs deliberately tailored for poor families, such as the 1 cow per family, we call it in our language, Giringa initiative, have dramatically changed lives and exemplify that war on poverty can be won owing to strategic actions within our means if we made the right choices. Concerning that 1 cow per family initiative, you may know that cattle possession has always been considered as a symbol and a metric of wealth in Rwanda. But of course, not everyone would own a cow. So in line with the endeavor to uplift needy households out of poverty, the President of the Republic initiated that program. Each fiscal year, budget was earmarked to sourcing cows to be allocated to poor families identified within their communities. Subsequently, willing individuals and corporate companies followed pace in donating cows for the same purpose, adding up to government's effort. Within a few years after it was incepted, this initiative proved to be a quick poverty killer. Recipient families were able to have milk for consumption and for sale. Cows produced manure the owners used to improve the fertility of their land, making it more productive. The beneficiaries gradually appropriated the philosophy behind the initiative and joined in donating sprouts of their cows to not yet served cattle-less families in their neighborhood. In addition to its economic significance, this initiative has created more cohesion within the communities, where social bonds increase between the donors and the recipients. Those were some examples I was giving to show how good choices can help move towards dignified lives. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to once more register my appreciation for giving us an opportunity to reflect on a challenging yet noble theme. Striving for human dignity is an imperative we have to embrace wholeheartedly as Africans, in due regard to the wide gap we still have to fill. We are not starting from ground zero, fortunately, since we have living examples to emulate in other parts of the world that previously went through similar challenges. The struggle is daunting but not impossible to win. Our gathering today testifies to that shared conviction. I thank you very much for your kind attention.
Another round of applause, please. Before I call the next guest, I'm going to call someone I'm sure you all will be delighted to see. Smile before he comes up, I assure you. Smile in advance. The next set of people we're going to call are so important that I'm going to step aside now for a senior colleague, a distinguished Nigerian, the father of comedy in Nigeria. Please join me in welcoming Ali Baba.
Your Excellency, sirs, I Okay, now Vice President is holding his head. I'm going to maintain my cool. Since he stopped collecting offering, things have changed. Now he gives offering. It's an honor to be in front of you here. I am a product of poverty, and now I can't say that I'm poor because I managed to tap into the opportunities that have been given to me, and that is one thing that this lecture is about. It's about seeing how we can move from the indices of poverty to the high ground of wealth and how it affects human dignity. My dad once told me, he said, the difference between a poor man and a rich man is what they get. And I said, how? He said, okay, that he will show me sometime later. And that day in the evening, we were strolling in Nojo Cantonment, and he called one of the batmen to one of his colleagues and said, come, and gave him 2 naira. And the man knelt down and thanked him and praised him. And about a week later, one man came to my dad's house and said that he had an issue with the customs at the time. And my dad said, okay, so what do you want to do? He said he wants to go and sort some things out and asked for a particular amount, I think about 7 naira or thereabout. And my dad gave him 2 naira. And the man said, this is not what he came for. That he actually is looking for 7 naira to sort his issues. And my dad said, you see, the man is wealthy enough to know that 2 naira is not anything. But the other man knew that 2 naira was even more important. The issues we're going to deal with this morning, we've invited someone who should know. He's a manager, a researcher, an economist, an engineer, a man of God, a man from God, a philosopher, a mathematician, and as a farmer. And above all, I'm looking at it again that he's also a student. Is there no end to getting this education for this man? But before I bring him on, I would say one thing that my cousin said when we were very young. He asked his uncles, my uncle said, can we go play with Reverend Father's children? And my uncle said, Reverend Fathers don't have children. He said, so he's not a real father. So, let's welcome Reverend Father Dr. Godfrey Nzamujo. Please give him a round of applause as he comes to me.
Suggesting that we have before us a systemic problem that requires a holistic and broad-based approach. Unfortunately, most of the solutions we have seen so far seem to be piecemeal and symptomatic therapies that hardly work. It's like you're taking aspirin when you have malaria. It will never work. We are operating from a mechanistic paradigm developed centuries ago. In the best cases, these solutions are simply band-aid endeavors. In most cases, however, they end up creating more problems. It is, however, refreshing, Mr. Vice President, to know that more and more people are now realizing that we have hit a point in history that calls for dynamic and orientations that are deeper and broader than any attempts we have seen so far. Today's challenges require a radical shift, not just in our vision of the world or our mentality and how we think, but in every aspect of our lives. From the way we see ourselves and our relationships and how we relate to each other, from our relationships with the environment, to our intellectual, scientific, technical, and business orientations, from our production systems to the way we exchange and consume our products and services. Business as usual is no longer an option if we really have to come out of it. It should be new wine in a new wineskin. We need a new roadmap, a new compass. The disheartening socioeconomic situation today, I think, will continue and will definitely get worse if we continue to navigate with the same old map. Our compass is not pointing to the true north. It's like trying to find a Bado on the map of Ghana. I don't know how you're going to find it. Our compass is not pointing to the true north. This wrong map, developed and adopted slowly since the beginning of the fourth industrial revolution, engineered by the Cartesian mechanistic worldview, is not going to be of much help to us today. A major step in this process will be, to a great extent, how to build the institutional framework that is needed to raise the human resource base that will be capable of harnessing, as the chairman said, the opportunity sets as the new paradigm does. Repeat, how can we harness the tremendous opportunity sets that we have in this country? In other words, the challenge before us now in this country is how to appropriate and align ourselves with the emerging worldview and create an enabling institutional framework that will enable us to unleash the production of critical mass of a new human resource pool that is equipped with the right vision, values, and capacities to help us navigate through this difficult and challenging period in our history. I am convinced that the solution to our problems today can no longer be found in our present day attitude and logic. We should see our lives and actions as a part of a difficult mission of developing new mental and operational frameworks that are based on what we now know about our own world, how our world works. Fortunately, modern sciences, among others, the biological sciences, the neurosciences, cognitive sciences, are now providing us with fundamentally different and refreshing frameworks about our own human dynamics as well as those of our planet. From these sources, Mr. Vice President, a new paradigm is emerging. This new paradigm has a completely new and different technological, organizational, socioeconomic orientation. This paradigm is challenging us to learn from the basic principles of the workings of our planet and human history. We believe that by seeing our problems from this worldview, we will be in a better position to design, re-engineer our way out of our present crisis. This new paradigm must be appropriated and deployed by a critical mass of our people if we are really committed to creating, designing, and inventing organizations, industries, economic activities that will solve our present-day problems. The big question is, what leadership role can we play in moving us from our present mindset and logic of poverty to a new worldview? Are we equipped? Are we willing to play that role? The new paradigm, Mr. Vice President, is the basis of the foundation of the third industrial revolution. There are three pillars here in this new worldview. Together they constitute a new foundation for the third industrial revolution, which must get on the way if we are to re-engage ourselves in sustainable pathways. These pillars are distributed energy regime. I'm not going to go into it. We have moved away from the old centralized. Every community, every place must have its own energy, produce and consume. This is a new thing. There's energy everywhere. We must do it. Every community must protect. The world, the sun outside 1 square meter is producing almost 1 kilowatt. We're not harnessing them at all. Second one, syntropic connectivity. We must reconnect the internet and kind of thing. This new revolution is a booster, is a steroid. We must be involved. Things of the internet, this must be over there. Then this is very, very important for us. The third one, this connectivity is going to help us to create synergy, symbiosis, complementarity, collaboration, and supplementary. This is extremely important. So these three. But the third one, I'm going to dwell today. The other ones are full, can take us years. The third one, Mr. Vice President, I'm going to go into and develop it, the discovery and harnessing of the microbiological capital of the universe, and most particularly in Nigeria. It is incredible. The last time I went to visit Governor Inikiti, I was going through. It was incredible. Ikiti is a scandal of biological capital. It is incredible what we have in this country. But we're not using them at all. Now, the sin of this are small animals, effective and indigenous microorganisms that's everywhere. They constitute the foundation of authentic technologies to unlock the potentials of our biological and environmental capital in Africa. These are the sin. Most of them you're going to see today. They are integrative microorganisms. These are beneficial syntropic groups that create synergy and ecological relationships. These include, among others, lactic acid bacteria, photosynthetic bacteria, and this. I'm going to give you an example, Mr. Vice President. If you look at them there, chlorophyll to them, they can only harvest less than 10% of the solar energy they've gone. Out of, imagine, 100% we are only harnessing to them. But we have to develop, we are growing in Nigeria, 180 and growing. These bacteria, like the photosynthetic bacteria, Mr. Vice President, they have the capacity to harness more than that. These bacteria don't use anything, they eat solar, they eat anything, and the capacity is out of this world. So we are before a technology can give us license to invent, license to create. And this is what we are really going to do today and going on top of them here. Now, look at it. So over there, we see the human microbiota that is going to be the challenge of this thing. The human body, all of us here, we are swimming in an ocean of bacteria. All of us. This is what you are seeing here, mister. Look at this. This is not real. This is real. This is real. We are all covered. But fortunately, when you hear about bacteria, you think something is bad. No, most of them are good. So the human body is colonized by a vast number of microbes, collectively referred to as the human microbiota. The link between these microbes and our health is the focus of the growing number of research initiatives. And the new insights are emerging and are rapidly changing the way we see our health and how we're going to. So this is going to be, those small, incredible things is what is going to be our world today. Now, look at this is the lab where we're now working on them, making sure we grow those powerful things to change our world. Look at them here. These are creating synergy, as you can see here. Like these are the part working together, they create incredible things, develop. The next one. Now, look at what is happening. In life, Mr. Vice President, we have three groups of these organisms. This is the one we hear about, the bad ones, CD, Ebola, and all of them. But they are not more in number. They are in a minority, but they are bad boys. Everyone has, we in Nigeria, we have our own Boko Haram. The bacteria have their own Boko Haram. But fortunately for us here, we have these opportunistic ones here, you see. And then the indigenous microorganism. All we are trying to do, Mr. Vice President, is to make in such a way that we create another thing. Look at what is happening. We apply probiotic and prebiotic things to the indigenous microorganism, our biggest power in this world. We do something, and this is what is happening, and then you see they become. They make the life impossible for these bad ones. This is the new technology that can save our universe. It is a license to create. Now, these are, beyond that, they also seem biologically in Nigeria. These are the insects, micro, working with them. Beautiful animals, you see them. But we have been killing them. This, without them, we will not live. We have to find a way. Look at what they are doing. The protozoa, all of them working together. The soil is not compact. The soil is a big city, bigger than Lagos. So the whole idea is really changing here. Look at them. Now you see here, these also insects are helping us to do all the work. Here, they are impeaching their governor who is not helping them. Here you see them. Not our own governor, Coyote, not one. And so this is what is going on here. And then, see, now this is what they are doing. This is the covenant of the plants here working with all those microorganisms creating this. We don't need any chemical, any kind of thing. This is the new world we are developing. But the most important thing is that, look at this. The microbiota. The bacteria colonies living here constitute another organ They are responsible for our health, stability, our mental health. We have neglected them. All we are doing is to feed them correctly, change our life, our humor, our intelligence, our health. This is the new one, creating jobs everywhere. This is incredible. Now, the Songa initiative is basically the harnessing of all those things I've told you to invent and develop new and appropriate technological and development trajectories. It is an integrated development system that organically creates dynamic linkages and synergies between agriculture, industries, and services, and also within each of them. Mr. Vice President, when we change the way we grow our food, we change ourselves, we change our values, we change our society. The basis of sustainability, Mr. Vice President, is producing more with less. Now, this is it. Regenerative green technology at Songhai constitutes a central part of our drive to develop authentic technologies that bring into play the natural forces of synergy and amplification and examining actions in nature that have been ignored by conventional methods. This method creates a probiotic environment that empowers the regenerating agents of nature. These agents are capable of creating reverse entropy, syntropy, and the super enabling conditions and environments like enzymatic actions, appropriate pH conditions. It is producing more with less. Look at it, Mr. Vice President. Our agriculture is inefficient today, conventional. Look at this, producing chicken. You see, all these are waste, smelling and causing trouble here. Look at them, all waste. But look at what we should be doing, deploying the new one. Here, nothing is wasted. The waste from the manures are used to produce biogas for energy from prisoner production. Nothing is wasted. All of them are connected. We have developed that synergy, producing more with less. This is what will be seen to them, Mr. Vice President. Look at that. Everything is connected. The waste from here becomes input in here. The waste from here, nothing is wasted at all. And the energy, we're producing energy, not from corn, but from all the waste from the agricultural production. Look at this here. If you look at here, Mr. Vice President, all the waste product from here is captured here. All the waste, the microorganisms break them up, they collect the solar energy, and that fills us up, and the water is over, and we're raising tons of cane. We have no second way. Oh, this is a toilet, but no smell at all. All the waste are transformed by the bacteria, filtered by the water hyacinth, and we use the water hyacinth to create biogas and energy. Nothing is wasted. Look at them. The wood, nothing is wasted, so the energy is being created. Now let's zero down and look at the crop production. It's still linked. The agriculture is not, all of them are linked together. Look at what is going on. This was a red soil, dead, gone. But using this method again, Mr. Vice President, everything is transformed. Look at them. Look at what is going on. These are the straw we throw away, creating incredible production. Now look at in Katsina, dead. But look at what is going on. Using. Look at this here is where you see the chicken dropping is what's with no smell at all. You can eat a lunch here. The droppings come here. We put the microorganism on them. They transform them into super soil. We take them here. Only 2 weeks here, they go and produce a crop here. Then we take the waste from the biogas, we put them over there, and then this can stay here 4 years, no tilling, zero tilling, no hard work, no weeds at all, and we are producing incredible return. Look at what is going on, Mr. Vice. This is the waste from the piggery, and now using it to irrigate all of that thing. No chemical, no pesticides, nothing at all. Taking the incredible thing that we're seeing. Look at the result of it. We should eat it. Look at this. No chemical, no pesticide, producing all year round. That soil, only 3 days we produce. Any soil you see here, only 3 days we start producing again. Look at that. Look at the onions in the south. This is in the rivers. South, we can produce onion all year round. Look at the productivity. Look at what is going on. Carrots are produced. Look at the quality of that production. Look at the level of papaya is calling a low-hanging fruit here. Look at the productivity and not going. Now look at that. The productivity and that. Look at the product of pepper over there. Production. Look at again the tomatoes. Now you can see now at Songhai we are producing in Africa. Look at the strawberries. So the soils in Africa can grow anything if we use African super soil. Now look at the productivity. Look at the productivity of the tomatoes using that soil and kind of thing. So we can change everything. I think people who are poor in Africa should go to jail. This is This is what is going on. We produce our own corn. Look at the color of this, no chemicals at all. This is produced corn 3 times a year. There's no productivity. Look at that. Look at the sweet corn. Look at it. This is Katsina. The tons, we're no longer caressing poverty. We're doing the right one. Look at the production of pineapple in the north in Katsina. In Katsina state. Look at banana in Katsina state. The productivity. Look at cassava. No weed at all. More than 65 tons of cassava per hectare. Right production, the feeding of them is from the chicken and pig waste. Is this one now with microorganisms that is now feeding all that we are producing record time. Look at how Songhai looks like. Look at that productivity, agroecological, mushroom, all this. Bees, because the bees complete generation. Now from there, we're now going to go on crop linked from here to here. We're going to see the livestock. Look at the start of the cows now producing no chemicals. Look at what is going on. Look at that. Look at this one. In the north where it's very hot, they have a special breed. They are air conditioning here. They didn't need any air conditioning and they're laying eggs like crazy. Look at that productivity. Look at this pig here, 19 babies. And it's going on. And look at this concept. Clean. Now from there, we now go aquaculture. Look at the new system. Each pond is 2 tons 2 times a year. We're producing 2 tons each one of them, all that recycled. Look at what is possible in Africa. And it's going and producing. This is all and going. Look at the productivity. Fingerlings, 1 female can get up to 50,000. Look at what is going on. Production. Now look at the size of this guy and the fish. This fish only got in 6 months. Look at them. African catfish and that productivity. The filtration, all the water from here is filtered, come back again, we take it back again. We take the algae and return them again. So the water is not even wasted, it's ecological. Instead of importing all the feed from, call them coppers, this is produced in Africa using that kind of thing. Then from production, as the chairman was saying, we have been exporting poverty, exporting wealth, and importing poverty. We go into the secondary production where value is added. This is agro-industry, creating job everywhere. These young people in Katsina are producing these machines everywhere going. And we're exporting them now. This now is 5 tons an hour. We take them from farm to farm going. Look at the production. Organic, it won the first prize in Vienna. All the products over there. Look at the quality over there. Look at the productivity. Look at that one. Look at that. Hey, it smells good, eh? It smells good. The production of water and all this one of thing. Recycling all the stupid plastic here to do other products here. See what is going on. All the white sachet and look at the result. These are recycled things here. Instead of lying around blocking our waterways. These are the recycled things. Look at this. All the cassava production. Soap. The best soap against mosquitoes. We are aware of Zika. All these kind of things are driving away all the mosquitoes. There's a special one against, you wash it, no mosquito, all the mosquitoes will walk out, they'll go away. And this is from the waste of the carrot and every kind of thing. From a byproduct we can use, we use them again to make incredible soap. And then from now you see, we have produce, we have industry here, we now go to services, everything linked together. Now we see we are marketing them, ecotourism. Look at what Songhai looks around. Why should we go to Europe where we have this in Africa? Look at how it looks. So agriculture is not just food, it's the whole life. Look at what is going on today in that. Look at what Songhai represents. Look at what Songhai. Now the world leaders are coming out. Look at this here. We saw a former president was there to see what is going on. Look at the president of Equatorial Guinea and our president. Ban Ki-moon spent his 66th birthday. He declared Songhai a center of excellence for Africa. That's what is going. Our own banking. Kofi Annan came over there. You can see I was teasing him. I said when they've driven you away from New York, you're coming back to Africa now. He said. So this is what is going on. Nobel Prize going. The French president coming to visit and that. And then thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Yeah. I think this is the resurgence of the Songhai Empire. Please, let's give another round of applause to Reverend Father. Reverend Father, Ibo Nibo.
Qu'est-ce que tu parles?
Okay.
Qu'est-ce que tu dis?
You're an Igbo man. That's why they put you in charge of this project. But ladies and gentlemen, that is just mind-blowing. Let's give another round of applause to great effort, please. It's very clear because the allied businesses and the other things that the job creation and the effect, we can all see that. And the next speaker, because we have so many people that will be speaking, the next speaker will take us on another journey. Ladies and gentlemen, she is from the West African Civil Society Institute, executive director, and she's the regional policy advisor. You have it in your program there. What I just want you to know is that these days, when you listen to a woman speak, you don't listen to her speak from a point of gender. You listen to her speak from an agenda. So, ladies and gentlemen, please let's give Nana Asantewa a round of applause as she comes to make her presentation. Okay, madam, I'm not impressed. Can we give her another round of applause, please?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, Your Excellency, Mr. Vice President, Excellencies here present, Honorable Ministers, His Royal Highness the Oba of Lagos and his esteemed entourage of chiefs, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. And you know now in Ghana, we've also learned from Nigeria. After you've listed everything, you say all protocols duly observed. I would like to express my profound gratitude to the Center for Value Leadership and Prof. Utomi for this opportunity to share my thoughts and reflections on the theme of wealth, poverty, and dignity. Issues that have plagued my mind as I have interacted with governments and citizens of West Africa these past 18 years, working on governance and human rights. Pardon my voice, I'm being threatened by some cough, so I may intersperse it every now and then. Please pardon me for that and ignore it. The latest 2015 Oxfam report, for those who have read it, has stated that currently 88 of the world's ultra-high net worth individuals own as much as half of the world, 3.5 billion people. And by 2050, they actually believe that even lesser than 63 of these high net worth individuals will own as much as 99% of the rest of the world. The gap between the wealthy and the poor is widening and continues to widen. This gap will increase, and as the script has always read, Sub-Saharan Africa leads the group of poverty-stricken countries, always featuring prominently in the UNDP's list of the least developed countries. And I'm sad to say, actually in 2010, when they were listing a number of countries that were very poor, Nigeria was one of them. They have described a list of remedies. They have a prescription, this is Oxfam, to address this issue. And these include a strengthened social contract between government and the citizenry, restructuring the tax structures to capture the needed revenue, to curb illicit financial flows, block waste and leakage, deal with corruption, and invest in social services, health and education particularly, and also have in place a social security net. These are all well and good, and I doubt that we do not know this. Honestly speaking, I think that actually in Africa, we have the resources, the technical resources, we have the intellectual know-how. Look at what we have just seen. It is here. We have everything that we have, all the resources that we need to prosper and be wealthy. We have it within us. But until we tackle the more insidious and fundamental problem that we have, this change to close that gap of the poor and the wealthy will not happen. It is this canker that I submit we need to change to address our situation. And this is what I would want to talk about. So I would want to look at this theme from a different perspective. I want to talk about the loss of our collective dignity, the moral and value deficiency that results in self-centeredness, individualistic materialism, and a myopic view of wealth. When we talk about wealth, for many, we are measuring it in terms of assets and capital, measuring it in terms of how much money you have, how many cars, whether built in the country or in Dubai, which is the place of choice, how many cars, how many houses, even, particularly for the men, how many women you have married, not to count concubines. But if we go back to our African culture and what it is that we have been brought up with, what we believe in is what yesterday Prof. Utomi mentioned, Ubuntu. I am because we are. Until we address that issue of our collective wealth and well-being, we will continue to remain poor. Because it is not about cash that we are talking. It's not about being cash rich. It is not only about yourself, but it's about your community. It's about developing your community, enriching, empowering your community, and doing it through decent labor. My father used to say, he was a chartered accountant, and every time you took a budget to him to look at, because we would have to prepare a budget for the markets, and then he would go through it and tick what he thought was important and what was not. And one thing he often said at the end of every budget review was that cash money does not grow on trees. And even if it grows on trees, you have to work to pluck it. It is important for us to take this into consideration and realize that in this day and age, that does not seem to be the priority. Today, we practice the idolatry of wealth. Money has become our God. And in a typical scorched earth manner, it doesn't matter who or what we destroy to get it. Once we do, the end justifies the means. In last year's BEC in Ghana, over 60% of their papers were cancelled and rewritten. Now, what had happened? The papers had leaked, and parents and school authorities had actually bought these papers from officials of the West Africa Examination Council who had been entrusted with the confidentiality of the contents of these papers. They were in cahoots with them, and they sold these papers to them for a fee. The school authorities and teachers bought this, and they organized classes and mock exams with these questions. And the students knew it, the children knew it. So at this young age, this teenage, this is what they are learning. They are learning very early in their lives that when you want success, you must get it, no matter what the means. Our universities have become political party enclaves. Students are given money to spew propaganda on campuses. In the 1970s and the 80s, even in the early 90s, in a number of our countries in West Africa, our universities were the hotbed of political struggle. Students stood up and demanded accountability from governments, very often military governments, and sometimes at the peril of their lives. Today, they have become mouthpieces of government because of what they get. Politics and the pursuit of power, generally speaking, is not to serve the people and improve their lives. It is to amass wealth. And so those that go in with the intention of the former are either soon co-opted to join the choir, or they have to leave because they can't stand the rot. And so politicians go into office on the foundation of deceit. They lie to the people to get there, and because money is all that matters in our elections, they steal or borrow and virtually sell their souls to get power. And when they get there, they have, of course, to pay back. So they have to steal to pay back. It takes leadership, the right political leadership, to create that enabling environment to let businesses like what we just saw thrive. But when you have politicians who go into power, not thinking about the people and development for the people and ensuring that the whole country benefits and develops through businesses such as that, through projects such as that, they will not put in place the structures, the institutions, the right laws, policies, and regulations, and the resources to ensure that this happens. In fact, sometimes they actually block such developments. We point a finger at the politicians, but as they say in one of the languages that I speak, when you point a finger, remember the 4 others point at you. In our businesses, we are corrupt and do not mind destroying others to get ahead. Our churches, and as a Christian, that is what I know best, have become money-making ventures for our pastors. The word that is preached is no longer focused on those 2 things that Jesus said was the foundation of all faith: loving God with all your soul, mind, and body, and loving your neighbor as yourself. No, it is about prosperity. Bottom line, how much one can accumulate. And the pastors set the example. In Nigeria, there seems to be a competition on how many jets a pastor can have. The church, which in many of our countries years ago focused on values and invested heavily in education and health, is now focused on investing in self. The one who is accorded the greatest respect is the one who pays the biggest tithe, and where the money comes from does not matter. Our traditional leaders, who in days gone past were the custodians of culture, and in fact embodied, but also ensured compliance with our value system, have themselves turned into true worshippers of money. In fact, in a number of places, and I speak from the Ghanaian context because that is what I know, chieftaincy can be bought. You now have development chiefs. Illegal mining, what we call in Ghana galamsey, has destroyed several acres of arable land and consequently the livelihoods of thousands. In Ghana, lands belong to stools, traditional leadership and families, and you have chiefs who actually sell these lands to people, and in recent times the Chinese particularly, to deal in this kind of business and destroy the lands of their people, which actually gives them food and their subsistence. Our communities and families hail the wealthy and no longer care about how they made their money. About 10 years ago, a member of parliament in Ghana was arrested in the UK for drug trafficking. One would have expected his family and community to bow their heads in shame. But no. They rather touted the good deeds of this man and how he had built some development projects in the community and taken care of his family. In fact, when the man came back to the country after his release from the UK, there was an entourage to meet him at the airport. We have lost our moral compass. We have become values bankrupt. We have lost what Prof. Utomi calls a sense of shame. In my mother's tongue, they will say, Ohimbeleto Eja, to wit, your shame bottle has broken. We have lost our collective dignity. We are so impoverished by the poverty of our minds, hearts, souls, and concern for the other. And so it doesn't matter how cash rich a few of us may be, we are not truly wealthy. So what is the prescription? I would like to suggest that we go back to our value systems. Prof. Reverend, you talked about indigenous microorganisms. Let's go back to our indigenous microorganisms. Sankofa is a saying in Twi. Twi is an Akan language in Ghana. It means go back to pick up. It means it is not abhorrent to go back and take something of value that one left behind. Go back to your roots. To do that, we need many Prof. Utomis. But until we can clone him, we have to find the way. We have to find them. We have to groom them. You know, the thing though is that all of us have a Prof. Utomi in us. Let's get off that fence and contribute in every way we can to making Nigeria better, to making Ghana better, to making Africa better. The leadership that we have, the poor governance that we have, is because we have allowed it to happen. Kofi Annan has said that he has seen recalcitrant governments, but he has also seen how citizens' power can change the tide in their favor many times. And he prescribes 3 ways. Use your thumb, vote. And Nigerians proved last year that that is possible. Use your voice, speak out. And now we have so many ways, so many mediums of doing that. Use your feet. Take away your money from the things that you do not support. Yesterday, Madame Ezekwesili also prescribed education, and I concur fully. But we need to get leaders with those positive values that we need and who truly care about the development of our nations rather than themselves, to put in place the structure and the content of that education. And I'm not talking only about political leadership. I'm talking also about leadership at all levels of society: family, community, business, religion, tradition, and of course, politics. Those leaders are right here in this room. But to bring about that change, we need to make some personal sacrifices and be ready to make them. Are we ready? Until we are, this status quo, in which we lose $50 billion annually as a continent to illicit financial flows, facilitated by corruption and weak governance, will not change. That same amount of $50 billion can actually build the infrastructure that we need on the continent to accelerate our development and make the quality of life better for the people. Finally, I want to end with this. Whether we like it or not, we are in the global development race. And I want you to paint in your mind the picture of 2 people running a race. They are both in both in excellent health, with all their parts of the body working perfectly. But before they run the race, in fact, one of the 2, who is even better endowed than the other, takes a rope, folds one of his or her legs, it can be a man or a woman, and ties that leg tightly. These are 2 people running. One who is even better endowed folds their leg, ties it with a rope. The race begins. It doesn't matter how long the race is or how fast the one with the tied leg runs. That person will never beat the other who is running with both legs. Unless we, in Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, empower that half of our population, women, to enable them contribute fully to development, we will remain impoverished. Kweju Agri said that when you educate a man, I'm sure many of us have heard this several times, you educate an individual. But when you educate a woman, you educate a nation. The potential of women to accelerate the development of our continent is huge, but we will never realize it if we continue with the traditions, cultural practices, norms, and mores that restrict them and curb their potential. In the book, Why Nations Are Poor, Prophet Tomi talks about a poor widow, in fact, about 2 or 3 of them, whose lives have been made significantly worse once their husbands died. Immediately, their protective covering was removed. Without the man, they were nothing and lost everything. Socially, politically, economically, we tie up half of our population and inhibit our own progress. We want to get out of poverty. We want to restore our dignity and enjoy true wealth. Let's enable everyone who is born to get the opportunity to be the best they can be. Of course, it's easier said than done. But it starts with you and I, doing all we can within our sphere of influence to make life better, not only for ourselves, but our families, our communities, and our nations. Thank you very much.
As she was speaking, I could see a lot of people nodding, and it means that what she was saying sank in. So please, let's give her another round of applause. Nana Afadzinu, thank you very much for those insightful words. It has driven some of us to the point where we're going to see that we wake up and do the right thing. Talking about preparing for the future, I will invite shortly a man who also is in the race for preparing us for the future. He is a man of God. And when I say prepare us for the future, you know that we all hope. Let me just find out, because it's not everybody. Is anyone here ready? Do you want to go to heaven? Just raise your hand. Those of you who, not now. Those of you who want to go to heaven, can I see your hand up? Okay. The bishop is looking at you. The cardinal is looking at you. If he sees a member of his congregation now, so he knows that that is not one of his candidates. But these people prepare us for the future as well. And that is exactly what her presentation has been about. That we need to begin to prepare for the future. And every time I read the verse in the Bible of the 10 maidens that went to wait to see the groom, it just teaches me how to prepare for the future. The ones that were prepared for the future and the expectancies that they are not prepared for took extra oil. In Africa these days, we don't even go with oil at all. We just go there and wait. And when they say it's going to take 3 more hours, we just leave, because we know that we can't wait. So it's preparing and getting an extra oil. Nana, please. Thank you so much. Please give her another round of applause. At this time, I'd like to invite His Eminence John Cardinal Onayeko. Please let's give him a round of applause. The microphone.
Your Excellency, our Vice President, and all of us, brothers and sisters, good friends, both Nigerians and non-Nigerians. I only came to wish Pat to tell me happy birthday, welcoming him to the club of the, he's now sexagenarian. We have passed to the club of the septuagenarians. I'm 72. I became 72 last week, which is why I'm actually ready to go to heaven now. Yes, I've reached the stage to get ready to go to heaven. Yeah, I didn't prepare a written paper, but I just wanted to make a few points, and I think that's all we have time for, really. Yeah. First point I wanted to raise is, and the last speaker already hit at that, is that it seems like in the world of today, religion is practically on trial. There's too much bad news connected with religion, and not only in our country, but internationally speaking. And not only in the fact that there are fanatics who believe that only they know what God wants and everybody must comply, and are ready to use violence, including murder, to pursue their religious objective. Not only that, but also that religion has become very easily manipulated by political interests. It's not that politicians, the problem is not that politicians, where it's possible, they manipulate religion. The problem for me is that very often the religious people too make themselves easily available for manipulation. And the result, of course, is that the role of religion, that's supposed to be a guidance to right living, becomes compromised. You can go further also to the fact that sometimes you really wonder what the different forms of ideas about religion. It's wonderful that we seriously take the freedom of everybody to believe whatever you like. The result, of course, is that there are so many things going into the name of religion, and there are many kinds of religious leaders. My own private jet has not arrived yet, and even my Pope has no private jet. Not that he cannot afford it, but he doesn't need it, and I don't need it either. But you see, it's difficult for very often we who call ourselves people who are for religion, we have to constantly be defending what we are doing. And yet, the good news is that we are told 85% or more of humanity still believe in God and still expect that they be guided in their lives by something more than what is happening here. That doesn't mean that what is happening here is not important. Indeed, it is very important. But that what is happening here is important if it also does not lose sight of what comes later. And if we are able to balance both the now and the hereafter, then the thought of the hereafter will help to tone down some of the excesses of which we have been hearing of recent. And so that is the first point I wanted to make. The second point I wanted to make is about our country, Nigeria, and the role of religion in the country, Nigeria. I'm afraid that there is danger of polarization. And And whereas we need to move together. And it is difficult even to talk about putting our heads together when there is too much anger from various directions. I do not know how we are going to get over that. The South Africans had the experience of what they call truth and reconciliation. I believe the situation in Nigeria, I don't know, I'm not talking about Ghana or other African countries, talking of our own country, is such that we really need to do something seriously along those lines. I think more in terms of repentance, reparation, and reconciliation. Repentance will mean really telling the truth to ourselves. It is possible to repent, to say, oh, we did it wrong, let's do it better now. And reparation will mean, it's a consequence. If you are repented, then you repair. Reparation includes justice. And finally, it's only when that is done properly that we can be properly reconciled. And for reconciliation, you have to add another element, the element of forgiveness. Can we think along those lines? This will not be a political agenda. And where do our religions and religious instincts come in? I believe that if they say Nigerians are very religious, it is not something we should be ashamed of, because religion can be also an asset. How do we turn this asset into real, useful catalyst for making this country a better place? I believe it is possible. How we do it will require a lot of serious thinking, sincerity of spirit among ourselves, and cooperation between those who hold political power and other people who hold all kinds of other areas of importance within our society. At the end of the day, if we don't have peace, there can be no progress, and all the beautiful ideas of Father Namujo cannot take off. You need a peaceful environment for that to happen. I believe my brother Pat Utomi have been working on this in this direction. The whole of his projects is to let us know that there are alternatives to the things we are not happy about. That as Nigerians, we need not really lose hope that we can change. I'm not talking of change in any political sense now. But I mean, what we do, if we are not happy with with a lot of things, that we need to change. We need to change that to a better way of doing things. And I do believe that is possible. I wish Pat Utomi God's blessing. 60 years is quite a time, but for him, he has done a lot in those 60 years. If there is, you all know he's a good Catholic. He's a very good Catholic. One of those who is not ashamed of his religion. And I think that a lot of what he's doing is also inspired by his faith. And when we see that, we believe then that our work has not been futile. May God bless you.
Thank you, Cardinal. Gone are the days, and if you remember what the occupational trend had always been in Nigeria, it is that we started respecting people who were missionaries because they were teaching us values. And then gradually from respecting them who were missionaries, they became teachers, and we started respecting teachers. And from respecting teachers, they became civil servants because the people they taught now started working in civil service. Some of them worked in railways, and we respected the people who worked in the railways. And some joined the army. We started respecting those who worked in the army. All right, so the occupational trends have really been the background of how society really respects people. In those days, Cardinal would have been like the president of every area. And we all, in fact, to marry even, they will go and ask the missionary whether this girl is okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, they're still custodians of our society. Let's give Cardinal another round of applause. And I'll quickly invite the Most Reverend Dr. Augustine Akubeze. Please give him a round of applause to come. The Archbishop.
Your Excellency, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Your Eminence, John Cardinal Onaiko, Honorable Minister, the Chairman of this occasion, Professor Pat Utomi, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. The theme of this discussion is wealth, poverty, and human dignity. And my reflection is as follows. Pope Francis, in his bull of indiction, Misericordia Vultus, declared 8 December 2015 to 20th November 2016 the extraordinary Jubilee of Mercy. He directed that all the faithful contemplate the face of the merciful Father through the words and actions of Christ Jesus, who has come to show us the Father. This year, therefore, offers us a special opportunity to reflect with a merciful heart towards the plight of the poor in our society. He calls on us to wake from indifference to the misery surrounding us. The Jubilee Year of Mercy is an opportunity to open our hearts to those living at the fringes of society and rediscover the corporal works of mercy, of feeding the hungry, soothing the thirsty, clothing the naked, etc. The suffering of the poor and the thirsty, the suffering of the poor and the growing income disparity between the poor and the rich in Nigeria is something of great concern. It should trouble every reasonable person. In this short presentation, I intend to draw the attention of us all to the plight of the poor in the society and the need for a response from all of us. The Catholic Church as an institution in Nigeria has always been working hard to perform its prophetic role of being the voice of the voiceless in our country. I will briefly highlight how we as a church have attempted to alleviate the poverty and promote respect for human dignity through our educational policies and healthcare provision in this country. The Catholic Church in Nigeria is involved in various charitable acts to help the poor. The natural resources and wealth of Nigeria are certainly enough to meet the needs of the people of this country. The equitable distribution of wealth and resources to meet the needs of each person is essential for every society that wants to grow. The society that has no provision for the most vulnerable and the weak is not showing any serious sign to be civilized. The common good must not be subjugated to any individual or group desire. The challenge has been how to ensure that everyone in our society has a fair share of the resources. The income disparity in Nigeria shows that we are a society with lots of poor people. According to the 2010 World Bank report, 80% of the proceeds from the sale of crude oil benefits 1% of the Nigerian population on account of corruption. Consequently, many of our people are wounded and degraded by poverty, a poverty that generates other social problems: armed robbery, kidnapping, human trafficking for sex labor, terrorism, cyber crimes, seeking relief in drug and drug pushing. Poverty is visible in every sphere of our society. One of the consequences of poverty is the quality of life of the people. A lot of our people are not able to eat well, go to school, or receive proper medical treatment in moments of illness. This serious situation of poverty and poor medical facilities has led to the growth of prosperity gospel preachers and the offer of instant healing for any sick person. The poor medical facilities and the high level of illiteracy are making our people more vulnerable and susceptible to the manipulations of some pastors to preach prosperity gospel in an economy that is riddled with corruption. The poor are robbed literally of their human dignity because of their pitiable situation. In this year of mercy, let us see how specifically we can respond to some of their needs. The dignity of the human person is not what the society gives to the person. Human dignity has been given to man by God. The obligation of man is to work to ensure the protection of this dignity. It is part of the human dignity that man should have decent work and have enough income to support himself and the family, and also contribute to the healthy growth of society. One aspect of respect for human dignity that I want to use this medium to emphasize is that need to ensure that we promote a culture of life against a culture of death. The protection of the unborn child, which in our society for long has been taken for granted, is being assaulted by a number of abortions in our society. Let us educate our people on this matter. An unborn child is a human being with the rights to live. In addition, I want to point out that there should be respect for the elderly in our society. Children must take care of their elderly parents and not just abandon them in the village. An elaborate burial for a parent that one has not taken care of while alive is disrespect for the fourth commandment that calls us to honor our father and mother. The Catholic Church, through her various agencies, have been trying seriously to fight poverty in all ramifications. We have numerous programs that primarily target the welfare of the poor. A number of dioceses have increased locally generated funding to assist the poor. The members of St. Vincent de Paul Society, for example, have established low-cost housing for the poor. They make provisions based on their limited resources for the feeding of the poor. A number of parishes donate food items to the poor. But we know that these efforts alone cannot solve the suffering of the poor. So we need government and the private sector to partner with the church to establish programs that help to grant soft loans to the needy so that they will be empowered. Education is essential for the total eradication of poverty in our society. The Catholic Church in Nigeria has been in the forefront of education of people. More than half of the schools in Nigeria before government takeover of schools in the 1970s were established and managed by the Catholic Church. The takeover of schools has greatly affected the standard of education in our country. We are calling on government at the state level to return schools back to the mission with compensation. We praise state governments who have done this already. Only through proper education can our people be liberated from poverty. The Catholic Church in Nigeria has continued to establish new schools. There are also special needs schools for the blind. However, some of the challenges we are facing is the fact that some of these schools need proper funding to make it accessible to more people with low income. The tuition fee in some cases is relatively high for the poor. We are calling on government at all levels and the private sector to partner with the church to fund these schools so that we can pay good salaries to the staff and still have the schools open to lots of poor people. Presently, given our limited fund, we have a few slots allotted to indigent students. The scholarship for the poor is helping to give proper education to the poor who hitherto will not have been able to afford it. We are aware that a lot of government-funded hospitals are overcrowded and understaffed in some cases. This has led to the growth of in the private hospitals and clinics. However, most of these private hospitals are not accessible to the poor because of cost. We as a church have always been engaged in hospital management. We believe that hospitals are extensions of the healing ministry of Christ. Hospitals established by the church are increasing in Nigeria. We are also trying to make it easily accessible to the poor. But once again, it is not easy to get good medical personnel without good pay. We need the government and the private sector to partner with the church in this area of healthcare provision. Such a partnership will help to subsidize the high overall cost of administering these hospitals. Clinics in the rural areas are aspects where most dioceses in Nigeria are getting into more and more. A lot of people in our rural areas are still dying from diseases that have cure. There is high rate of infant mortality and maternal mortality at birth. One statistics indicate that Nigeria, which is 2% of the world population, is responsible for 10% of maternal birth mortality in the world. Most of these happen in the rural areas where the people are very poor and have little or no access to medical facility. We are trying to establish clinics with medical personnel to assist in this area. This is another area where I strongly urge the government and the private sector to partner with the church. A number of dioceses in Nigeria do have orphanages to care for abandoned children. It is always a huge challenge getting the resources to keep these orphanages going every year. We will need private sector and government partnership also in this very important area. Professor Pat Utomi, 60th birthday. I join the many voices who have been expressing congratulations to you on your 60th birthday. You certainly don't look 60. You look much younger. In addition, your accomplishments for the past years make most people I have spoken with express pleasant surprise. When I told some persons that I was going to deliver a talk on the occasion of your 60th birthday, the common response has been, "You mean Pat Utomi is just 60? I have been hearing of him and his contributions for many years, so I thought he was far older than 60. I also quickly tell them that this is true, that your achievements are huge when compared to your age, and that very few people work so hard as you do. That the passion for seeing Nigeria become a great nation burns in you. That this passion is informed by your Catholic faith on justice and care for the poor. So you have written and spoken about the need for Nigeria to discover the path to posterity. I recall here with sentiments of joy your book, Why Nations Are Poor, published in 2006 by the Center for Applied Economics, Lagos Business School. This book explores the reasons why countries are poor. Professor Pat Utomi has been one of those in the forefront fighting and working hard for the alleviation of poverty and respect for human dignity in Nigeria. So I commend his efforts and urge him not to relent, to continue to be the voice of the voiceless in our society. In conclusion, I want to use this forum to call on all Nigerians to work for the total eradication of poverty in our society. Let us start by empowering our people through the promotion of education of the poor, provision of good health care for the people so that they can have good quality life. May God bless our country, Nigeria. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, sir. One thing that I've come to know is that there are some very practical men of God who do not dance around words, they just tell you as it is. And the Archbishop is one of them, Archbishop of the Roman Catholic Church, Benin Diocese. Please give him another round of applause. Father Kuka, Bishop Kuka, told me once that he was in this office and somebody came to meet him and said he wants him to pray for her because she has a serious headache. And she had been waiting for about like 15 minutes. And so he asked her, "Have you eaten?" She said yes. And so he went to his cabinet, brought water, and when he turned, she was already kneeling down. And he looked at her. He dropped the water. Her eyes were closed. He went to the cabinet, brought paracetamol, tapped her shoulder. She opened her eyes. He gave her 2 tablets. And she said, "Well," he said, "Take, drink water." And she said, no, she wanted prayer. He said, "This is what paracetamol is made for. Don't come and be disturbing man of God every time. The 15 minutes you were waiting, if you took paracetamol, you would have been better." And she left. He said he made sure to call her like 30 minutes later and said, "How are you?" She said, "She's fine. What of the headache?" He said, "It's gone." He said, "Don't be troubling God with small matters." And so, true, the church knows that having a hospital and some amenities are important. And we thank you again, sir, for your listening. And for those of you who have listened, it is important for you to support the church in helping that the people are well.